Learning how to wedge clay is a necessary skill when you're working on the wheel. A few minutes spent wedging will even out the consistency of the clay and get rid of any air bubbles that could cause problems later on. I think the problem most people have with wedging is that they don't really understand how little they have to move the clay to get good results. I'm not trying to mix the clay here, I just need to deform the lump slightly so the clay particles start moving over themselves. And as soon as that happens, the water in the lump will start moving in between the clay particles and hydrate the entire lump equally. As you can see, wedging clay doesn't have to be an aerobic workout. I'm just applying enough pressure to deform the lump and then shifting it into a new position and then applying that same pressure again, just repeating the process over and over again. You can go at it as slow or as fast as you want. It's the technique that's important, not the rate of speed that you're doing it. The process that I'm demonstrating here is similar to kneading bread. It's just naturally going to form a long, skinny lump. When that happens, just turn it on its end and start the whole process over again. This method of wedging clay is the simplest and most straightforward, but if you don't have a lot of upper body strength, you are going to be limited as to the size of lump that you're going to be able to wedge using this method. Spiral wedging is just a simple variation on the two-handed method of wedging clay that I just demonstrated. This time I'm going to be applying pressure to the lump with my right hand while I'm twisting the lump with my left hand. This is a more efficient way of wedging a larger lump of clay because you're really only applying pressure to the very top of the lump at any one time. You're not trying to deform the entire lump. And again, the key here is to not apply too much pressure at any one time. You start off by just applying a little bit of pressure and let the pattern develop over a number of revolutions. It's kind of hard to visualize what you're doing with this form of wedging, but you're actually taking the outside edge of the lump and then forcing it towards the center. With each revolution, the lump gets rotated a little bit, so there's a new section of clay that gets picked up and pushed into the center. And that allows you to work all the way around the lump in a continuous motion. And because we're always picking up the outside edges of the lump and forcing them towards the center, the lump just naturally stays circular, so we never have to stop to restart the wedging or reshape the lump. It's always just one continuous motion. From this angle, you'll be able to see how the clay is moving through the lump. With each revolution, I'm adding a new roll of clay over the last one that was formed. These rolls eventually work themselves to the outside edge of the lump where they roll underneath the lump and towards the top. When this clay reaches the top, it gets forced back into the center of the lump and the whole process starts over again. So the right hand is always doing the wedging and the left hand is always positioning the lump for the next revolution. Here we have a lump of extremely wet and uneven clay that needs to be reconditioned. It's made up of pots that were thrown on the wheel and discarded for whatever reason. So it's made up of layers of soft clay covered with a wet clay slurry. First thing we need to do is even out the consistency of the lump by mixing up all the different layers within the clay as much as we can. The easiest way to do that is to take a wire and cut the lump in half, and then throw the outside edge of the lump back into the center. Next, I pick up the lump and rotate it so that the next cut will be 90 degrees from the last cut that I made in the clay. And then I take the top half of this lump, turn it over, and then mix it back in with the clay that's on the table. And then I just continue this process of rotating the clay and cutting a new face until the consistency of the clay evens out. Now the clay is fairly consistent, but it's still way too soft, so I need to dry it out. The easiest way I've found to do that is to take the entire lump and to slice it into thin sections, and then stand each section up on the table. This allows the air to get at the maximum surface of clay and allows it to dry fairly quickly without creating any hard edges. When the clay reaches the right consistency, you take all the slices and slap them back together into a lump and then condition the clay the way you did earlier. As I mentioned earlier, this process eliminates all the hard and soft areas that might be within the lump of clay and really reduces the amount of time that you're going to need to spend wedging to get the clay ready for the wheel.